What's up, folks? My name is Dustin Jones. Welcome to the MMOA podcast, and we have a very special edition of the podcast. We're doing our first ever 3-person interview with some amazing people from the Youngstown State University. Forget those people over in Columbus. But we have 3 very special folks that are doing some really innovative things in their community, in their program. And I think a lot of y'all are going to learn a lot, but then also get a lot of really cool ideas. We're going to be talking all about the concept of falls prevention, falls preparedness, how to teach people, how to fall, but how do we actually take that into the communities? Let's first do a quick roundtable. Shannon, Theresa, Christian, just a real quick introduction of who you are, and then we'll get into the goods. So Shannon,
Sure. Hi.
tell them about yourself.
Thanks. Thank you, Dustin. My name's Shannon Dudash. I'm a physical therapist. I graduated from Youngstown State University back in 2009. So I've been a PT for a while. I've been an assistant professor here since 2022. And my whole dissertation project has been around fall prevention, fall preparedness. And so that's why we're here today.
Awesome. And you can say the Youngstown State, right? Is that,
I
how
don't
do we
want to
feel
offend
about
all my
that?
friends down at Ohio State,
Awesome. All right, Theresa.
Right. Hi, my name is Theresa Minich. I'm a student physical therapist at YSU. I'm currently in my second year of the program, final didactic semester heading into clinicals, so very excited for that. I also got my undergraduate degree in exercise science here at YSU, so I've been here a long time. Not quite as long as Shannon. I'm kidding. And I'm also been a power moves certified instructor where I help lead our Parkinson's fitness class, and I help with Christian as he leads our falls class. Almost for a year now, and it's just been a really good time, and yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right, Christian.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm Christian Abrigg. I graduated from YSU with my bachelor's in exercise science in 24. Shannon, she brought me back in to help teach the Parkinson's exercise class, and then I lead the fall prevention class. I am also a personal trainer, so I kind of like to dabble in the physical therapy side of things and also the resistance training side of things.
Beautiful. That's awesome. So I met this crew. I was doing an Old Not Week lecture at Youngstown State, and we got to talking about this amazing program that they're doing. I wanted to bring this to you all. So there is some amazing work that's coming out of Youngstown related to falls prevention, falls preparedness, that's going to be published soon-ish. That we want to discuss first, and then we're going to get into what Theresa and Christian are learning from the practical application of doing this on a weekly basis. Because if you're watching or listening, I can only imagine, right? You probably have some of the questions of like how, especially around falls preparedness, right? Like getting people to fall well to reduce their risk of injury. There's a lot of concern. What if they get hurt? How do you actually do this, right, with individuals? That Theresa and Christian are going to be able to give some really great. Shannon, would you mind sharing a little bit about your article submission that, we'll share once it's published, but what's kind of the general theme? What are some of the big takeaways from that work?
Okay. Well, I feel like I have to give a little background. So I went to a pre-con workshop at CSM with Steve Kinney a couple years back. And he did a whole thing on fall landing strategies. And that kind of got me going down this rabbit hole of like, this is really cool. And we should be teaching this to people. Like, how often do physical therapists actually like get people on the floor and get them up? So I started looking at some of that literature. And with it, I found like we don't really know a lot about teaching older adults how to fall. So I decided to do this Delphi study. And again, this is part of my dissertation work. It was just accepted by BMC Geriatrics, so I'll share it with you when it's out. But I surveyed geriatric physical therapy experts on what should be included in a fall preparedness program. And I really isolated to the Moon and Sosnoff article. I know you talked to Dr. Sosnoff about his fall landing stuff and looking at some of the rolling, stepping, squatting strategies. So I used that article in my Delphi to help identify some of the things I was looking at. Once we started surveying people, I realized, oh my gosh, there were 46 items that people like wanted in this preparedness program. I was like, this is way too much. But at the same time, I was like, I think I was trying to think of fall preparedness separately from fall prevention. And I realized with this study that they have to live together. You have to do prevention and preparedness together. So we got a lot of great insight, and Theresa helped me put this together. So we found three main themes: education, like how are we educating people, home modifications, medications, environmental awareness. The second theme was fall landing strategies. So, what fall landing strategies do physical therapists think are safe to use and recommend? And then, lastly, fall recovery stuff. What are we teaching
Hmm.
people on how to get up off the floor? And if they can't get off the floor, what should they do? So, based on that, we did reach consensus with the Delphi for 43 different items. So, it's a big program that we put together
Dang.
to actually implement. But I think a lot of it is screening things and, again, lives in the prevention field. Under this whole umbrella, I feel like it's a fall management program that we're trying to implement.
That's awesome. So, Teresa, I'd like to hear your take on this from the education standpoint. So, like, there's so much information I feel like that we can provide people, right? And there's so many little things that can have a huge impact. Home modifications is a huge one, different lifestyle choices. What's the education like or conversation like when we're talking about learning how to fall? Is there a lot of fear, a lot of concern? How do you educate on that topic or sell them on that topic when you may meet a lot of resistance?
I'll admit, like, my experience in, like, clinic is still currently a little bit limited just because I feel like I was introduced to this after, like, my first clinical experience. So I'm really excited to take this out into the real world
Mm.
this, like, summer and fall. So most of my experience relies in our actual class itself. So either I'm learning with my peers or when I'm teaching with Christian. So
Mhm.
kind of we're working with participants that are already ready to make those changes. So I think it's that conversation's been a little bit easier because these are already people that agree to commit to a biweekly class and they're ready to make a change and help better themselves.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that's definitely like an advantage that we have that I don't take for granted.
Mhm.
But I think just also, like I know in the classroom we talk about like one size doesn't always fit all, where you kind of have to treat them as like an individual rather than like just geriatrics as a group, which is hard to do at the same time in like a fitness
Yes.
setting. That's where I'm like really grateful to have Christian, where as much as he leads the class, we're still able to kind of dream team make it work. We have like a wide spectrum of people in our class where like we have very like the very high functioning older adult, and then we have to be at the opposite end of the spectrum where someone who maybe needs a little bit more modification, slightly
Mm.
lower intensity, but still we work to try to challenge them all and meet them where they're at. So this is like a
Yes.
very long-winded answer. And I'm yeah,
No,
Shannon, I
that's
like to
great.
talk a
And that's
No,
a
lot.
you're
that's a really good point of when you're offering a class that, and I've got the flyer here, like some of the marketing, like it's a fall prevention exercise class, right? Like you have people that they know what they're going to get out of it to some extent, right? They don't know all the
Mhm.
minute details and all the activities, but they kind of know what they're getting into and they've already said, yes, I want that. And they're going to take their time, their money, and, put the resources towards making that happen. Very different dynamic, right? Than when I'm showing up to knock on their door. When I've been trying to call them for 3 straight days to schedule my initial evaluation or start a care in home health, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
very different
Yeah.
dynamic, and
yeah.
one is kind of easier than the other.
Sure. And I think, Teresa, to add on to what you said, we've had people in
Mhm.
class that don't want to get on the floor. They are
Yeah.
very resistant to that. So we've had to modify to, okay, can we do the head turns and the slap arms against the wall? And then eventually maybe get them down, like, so they're leaning on their chair a bit more, or use a high mat to help them. So I think Teresa and Christian have done a really nice job meeting people where they're at and then starting to build that confidence. Cause in all my literature searches, having those psychological fears are the biggest predictor of falling. So we need to
Mhm.
kind of overcome those barriers. And I believe that we can overcome those by getting people on the floor and realizing like it's okay to be down here.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
And
Mm.
if I can touch on this real quick too.
Yes.
One thing I've noticed whenever we have a new participant, it seems like every time when we have this conversation, it's always, I was told 1 in 3 people fall once they're above the age of 65. And I always try to remind them that falling it's a normal thing. Falling does happen. I once did a little survey with the class, and we also have some exercise science students that come. So I asked all the exercise science students, which they're all the, 20 to 25.
Mhm.
I was like, in the last year, how many of you have fallen? And 5 out of the 7 students there raised their hand. So it was a nice little eye-opening experience for the older adults in the class that like
Mhm.
falling does happen. So like Shannon and Theresa both talked about, like it is trying to get them one familiar with the ground and two trying to use those different strategies to again get them more comfortable, get them like
Mhm.
in a space where if they were to fall, they know how to fall.
Yeah. That's huge, man. I mean, just the self-efficacy of it, right? That falls efficacy that is such a huge predictor in so many outcomes. But it is, I've read so many articles and studies on how important it is, right? That they have confidence and
Yeah.
familiarity with the ground. But boy, is it difficult to get them to that point, right? It can be done. The how is, I think, the
Yeah.
challenging piece. So I think let's get into that, like in the classes, like what you all are doing. So I'll just give some context here for viewers. Would you all mind if I link to maybe the flyer for
No,
folks?
that's
Would
fine.
that be
Yeah.
okay? Just knowing that the dates will be out of, irrelevant, but I think I want to give listeners as many resources as we can. And I'll link to Steve Kinney's work, Dr. Sosnoff as well, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, man, I really want to do something like this. So we've got this flyer here. They're running 2 classes, Parkinson's class and then falls prevention. All right. So these are at 2 different areas in town. One is at a spot on campus and one's at a local church that they've partnered with. And so let's Teresa, Christian, if you wouldn't mind starting first, where have you found these people that have said, yes, I want to join that? Were there certain communities or certain pockets of people that you got a lot of participants from? Just thinking about folks that may want to start something like this, like where they should go first to try and get students or members. What's
Yeah.
that been for y'all?
I will say, like, there's been a lot of advertising through, whether it's the local YMCA. I know Shannon has done quite a few things with like WKBN, like our local news. One thing I've noticed, so it's been nice because when a client comes in and they enjoy the class, they tell their friends about it. And for a group exercise setting, a lot of the participants that come to the fall prevention class, they're all friends outside of this. So, like,
Mm,
that number just keeps growing. So, it's kind of created a nice community based scenario. But yeah, I would just say trying to find local places that you can put a bulletin board, or I know like churches are a great place to put a flyer.
mhm.
So yeah, just trying to find different avenues that you can just put your word out.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
do many people attend both classes?
Some do.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on, I would say, the severity of, since again the for the Parkinson's
Okay.
exercise class, they have to be diagnosed with Parkinson's. So no, it does depend on the severity, but some like to stay again. I think a lot of it's for the social aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
But
I can only imagine.
yeah,
So Teresa, would you mind walking us through? Let's focus on the fall prevention class. That's the second one out of the 2 that they're leading. What's the typical structure look like? Like if you were to kind of walk through kind of the parts of the class.
I mean, I don't mean to pass the baton right back to Christian, but he does design that class where I give
Okay,
him more of the design for Parkinson's. So again,
got
we
it,
work
got it.
together, we collaborate, bounce ideas, but I don't want to like take credit for his work. So Christian, I'm gonna
Yeah,
bounce it
no,
back.
don't.
I appreciate that, Teresa. I knew you would have done great, but um, so no, the way I've kind of created the class, so it always starts with the warm up, pretty dynamic warm up to get everybody moving, and then I like to move into a strength portion that mostly focuses on lower body strength. So, on average, we normally have anywhere between 10 to 20 people that come to class. So we'll kind of
That's awesome.
separate them into 4 groups. Oh, yeah. And it's like I mentioned too, like it's been awesome having exercise science students there to
Yeah.
also help out with the class. So we'll separate it into 4 stations. So one station is a squat form, and we have a lunge form, and then a carry pattern. So whether that's like a farmer carry, suitcase, whatever kind of carry, and then either a pushing or a pulling movement. So everyone will stay at that station for 3 minutes. When I say switch, you go to another station. And then depending on time, we either go through every station once or twice. So like I said, first half of the class is strength, and then we switch more into balance and coordination. So then we'll either do some single leg balance work, or I know all the participants love like tandem walking, different things to kind of challenge them and simulate, the different obstacles they can face during their day. And then the last portion of the class, this is where we have fun. That's either the fall prevention techniques, or we'll play a little game that, challenges them to a point where you need to have quick reaction time, dual tasking, things like that. But I always like to do the different falls techniques at the end, just because, their legs are already tired up to that point.
Yeah.
And then it's good to just try to make it as real life as you can.
That's awesome.
So that's the way the class is kind of set up.
And I think for viewers, I want to point out something that's really important is when you are creating a program like this, like the way Christian's designed it, especially from the strength standpoint, that's a very low equipment burden, right? When you have those stations, they're set up, they're there for 3 minutes, as opposed to if Christian wanted everyone to do the same thing at the same time, the amount of equipment that you need just goes through the roof. So that's a very equipment efficient way to do that. Sorry, Therese, did you have something to add?
I say the one thing that I think Christian should brag about, because it's been one of my favorite things that we've introduced into the class, is it happens during like that last portion of class where it's kind of like the have fun, but also like applying it to real life. Is that Christian is a big fan of obstacle courses, and our participants are a big fan. But to kind of help simulate, I say, I don't know the exact stats, so Shannon might need to help me out with that. But a lot of times, like people are more susceptible to falls during like dark environments, whether that's at night, they're getting up to get a drink of water, go to the bathroom. So Christian has altered like the lights in the room, where we'll either have them like dimmed, or depending on who's in the group, depending how many students we have, to like maintain safety, turn the lights off and do an obstacle course in the dark. Man. I feel like that's like really unique.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it truly has, I think, with that falls efficacy, or just kind of having confidence in the stuff that they can navigate maybe an unfamiliar environment. And again, we're not just like throwing weird stuff at them. Like, I think there's been like we have like these big like foam blocks, and you'd see in like daycare. I don't know the specific names for them, but like they're like irregular shapes. Sometimes we'll have them do like big step overs. I think the one time we were like rolling a ball like in their path at random to simulate if they had like pets or animals, where they kind of have to react. I just think that's a really brilliant part of his class that he's brought through. So I wanted you to talk about that, Christian.
Thank you, Theresa.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let's focus on the last part of that class. And Theresa's already mentioned a bunch of what you have. What other pieces of equipment do you feel like, Christian, are, if someone's at a clinic that wants to start this, what are kind of the bare minimum pieces of equipment or services that they would want to have to do something like this with a group?
Yeah. Bare minimum, definitely, I would say chairs and yoga mats, because especially for a lot of the techniques that we do, it requires transitioning from a chair to the floor. So depending on the floor that you do have at your location, definitely something with a little bit of padding. Just because when you are practicing these techniques, if your form isn't perfect, I'm not saying you're going to get hurt, but like you would rather have a nice cushiony surface. Chairs, yoga mats, not too heavy of dumbbells, probably anywhere between like 1 to 10 pounds, but that's about it. So the bare minimum, yeah.
Okay. So bare minimum, and then ideal. What would you want for the ideal if money was not a concern, space was not a concern?
Yeah. It's then heavy medicine balls. I would say heavier dumbbells, and just a lot of space. Yeah. I know you can't really pay for more space unless you get a bigger space, but you know what I mean?
What about surface? So you mentioned yoga mats with the floor transfers. Have you played around much with crash pads, gymnastic mats? Like, are there any certain characteristics that you like to see? And I'm selfishly asking because I've played around with a few different surface types, and some I love, right? But I feel like there's got to be something out there that's a little better. But I'd like, yeah, your
Yeah.
all's take on that.
Yeah. We do have exercise or like gymnastic mats. They're probably, Shay, would you say 3 inches thick?
I think about that, yeah. So we use the roll-up gymnastics mats. We roll them out on the floor. That's what we do our classes on. And then a lot of times they'll use the yoga mat on top of that.
Yeah.
And then we
Okay.
have a lot of wedges and soft mats. Those are tricky, but if I have somebody who's maybe more of a fracture risk or a little bit more fearful, we could get something softer out for them to start on, or even just start them at a higher surface. That's some of the ways that we modify.
That's awesome. So the rollaway gymnastic mats, what I'm familiar with are I've used a company called Dolomer. There's tons of companies, but it was about 4 feet wide and it was about a half inch thick of composite foam. So what you all are saying is yours are a lot thicker than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot longer.
All right. And it's not a roll. It's not the trifold. It's a roll over a
It's a
long.
roll. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll pull up my
Yeah. Yeah.
sheet
Send
and I
those.
could send you the link to the
Yeah,
ones we
I'll
used.
definitely put them in there. That'd be helpful. And the wedges as well. Those are
Okay.
great to have for folks that haven't played around with this, with obviously like adjusting how far people are falling, but then you can adjust kind of their range, if you will, with those wedges, on which you want to make sure that it's big enough. And
Right.
you all have figured that out.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. So so these people that come in, do you all have like cohorts, or is it just like if they want to start, they come in whenever they
I can
want?
talk. So just to give a little background, I wrote a grant to get money, and that's what I used to pay Christian and Theresa to help me. And that
Okay.
helped us get some of our basic equipment down the road. But outside of paying
Mhm.
instructors, once you have some equipment, there's not much funding needed. I feel like marketing, word of mouth does a lot. With that, at YSU, we're kind of limited by parking. So
Yeah.
we cap it at about 15 people. And then sometimes some of the Parkinson's people stay. So we have about up to 20 participants in that class. And then at our second location, we just started that in February. And we already have 15 participants, and we've capped it at about that, just based for safety. Same thing. It's
Okay.
great. We partner with our exercise science program. So we have a lot of those exercise science students coming over to get experience working with older adults, breaking down their biases of what it's like working with them. So
Yes.
having their hands on and help for people that need those modifications and teaching them how to do that has been wonderful. So, 15 is about our max just for safety purposes. So
Yeah.
we aren't missing anybody and we can modify.
That's awesome. So the 15, let's think of these 15 that just started in February. So like these new
Mhm.
folks. If Christian and Teresa, if you could share any practical tips that you find effective in introducing this to folks that lowers the barrier to entry, they feel a little bit more confident, and just go into detail for folks that may have never even messed around with fall landing strategies before, any of this type of stuff. But like, what are some of the principles or tricks, tips that you think about when you introduce it and there's a lot of fear on board?
Teresa, do you want me to go first?
Sure, Christian.
I would say for explaining the class, how I explain my breakdown for you, like at least the strength portion, I always kind of describe it this way. My goal is the hardest part of your week should be what you do in here in the strength portion. Is everything outside of here should get a lot easier because of what you're doing in here. Because think about every time you do a deadlift or you pick anything up from off the ground, we're trying to build up the strength to make that easier. When it comes to the fall prevention side of things, I try to explain that, like I mentioned, falling does happen. My goal is to try to teach you a way to fall correctly if you were to fall. For personal example, my mom fell this year, broke her wrist. I'm not blaming my mom for not falling correctly because I haven't really talked to her. No. But trying to avoid things like that. The last thing you want to do too when you fall is hit your head. Us teaching you the correct way how to fall, we can hopefully try to avoid that. So Teresa, if you want to piggyback off that.
I'd say to kind of put it in PT nerd, motor learning nerd terminology, I really am a big fan of optimal motor learning theory. So it's really that concept of salience is really important to making it important to them. It's not just, me and Christian are getting a paycheck. That's why we're here. We're here to help prepare you guys to be set you up for successful aging. So it's more so like it's not just like we're trying to show that we care about them. They should also care about themselves and their longevity. So again, Christian does a really nice job relating it to real life. And it's not just like, oh, we're just doing crazy stuff in fitness class. It's
Yeah.
real life practical applications, kind of going with that. And I think, like I said before, a meeting where there are reminding them it doesn't all happen in one day, where I think some of our participants, it's their first day and they see these other participants that have been coming for a year. And we're not going to jump to like that extreme, like in one day. And just kind of encouraging that me, Christian, the other exercise students, were here to help like serve them and make
Mhm.
sure they get a successful class no matter what. And then it kind of comes with that being able to adapt to what they need. We're like, all right, as much as we can educate them about, yes, it's very important being competent in like stand the floor to back up the stand transfers. If they're like, oh, the floor's off the table for today, you kind of just go, okay, we'll work with what we can. So a lot of times we kind of meet in the middle with that, like, I don't know if I want to call it modified, just that upright, or I know I'm not bashing on other fitness classes in the community or across country, but I feel like typically when you think of a geriatrics fitness class, a lot of it's just seated, low intensity exercise. My favorite thing to show these exercise science students is that just because they're an older adult does not mean they cannot do hard things, which I know is like the heart and soul of your old not weak
Mhm.
talks. That's just been like a really beautiful thing. I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent. Sorry, I'm bad at
You are not.
interviews.
That is not a
Um,
tangent, trust me. This is the
like
place to go off
like
on that for sure.
like my favorite thing is like looking at like the exercise science students like faces, where I think like we tell them, oh, they're gonna do this
Oh,
exercise,
yeah.
and like they're kind of like, are you sure that person's like 80? And then it's like they rock it, and it's just been really beautiful. And I think it's, again, we're kind of making a difference in like the future of healthcare and
Yeah,
fitness industry, which I think that's another important reason of why this should be a thing everywhere that it
100%,
can. I
100%.
don't remember the original question, I'm sorry.
You nailed it, and that's it's so true because you're challenging perceptions and beliefs of the people you're directly working with, right? They're coming in thinking they're gonna be doing one thing, and you're showing them something they thought they would never be able to do, right? And then that has a ripple effect, and then all the students and your peers and colleagues, and they're being challenged as well, right? When you're gonna show them a forward fall variation, and yeah, they get ghost white, right? Like those are huge moments that have huge ripple effects. And so this program, I mean, I find it very inspiring, right? Because like I do this stuff, in the marketplace of fitness and physical therapy, but to do this in where you're at in your career in a program, to have the resources that you all have, that is so impactful and makes me think that it can be replicated. And so that's where I want to wrap this up. I want to ask Shannon first and then Christian, Theresa. But Shannon, what would you say to other faculty members who are watching or listening to this to say, man, that is awesome. I would love to facilitate this. I would love to equip my students and empower them to be able to provide something like this in our community. What words of wisdom would you have for them, or words of caution, whichever you'd want to share?
Well, I guess to start with caution, I feel like the biggest question I always get is this safe? Is this safe? Everybody's afraid of like trying to
Mm,
practice falling. So we do phone screens and ask people their past medical history and get some insight on them. Oftentimes we'll do some kind of mini best or something to know how well they need to be guarded during class, or, for each participant it's a bit different. So I feel like sometimes our own fear of doing it is a barrier. Most even like it can be modified. We can modify these fall landing strategies so easily and have it, especially I think the university is a great place to start it because you have so many students that you could impact. And how Theresa said, we partner with our exercise science students. It's a lab for one of their classes now to come participate in our class.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so we've worked with them to help so we could just get extra hands in class to help us so we could keep people safe. But even if we didn't have that, just having that knowledge as a PT to be able to modify things and see people where they're at, I don't think you need to be scared of this. It's been wonderful. Our participants love the challenge. I remember when I was interviewing some of them, they told me their favorite part was getting on the Bosu balls and feeling a little unsteady. And it's, so they love the challenge. But if anybody needs help, feel free to email me, call me. I'm happy to help anyone who's interested in starting something like this. It's been very rewarding.
And I'll drop your email in the show notes
Okay.
for folks who are wanting that. I'll go Theresa first and then Christian. So think about the students, right? You know you're grinding through school, right? You know you want to do this really cool project that you believe in, and then you may come across something like this that you're like, man, that's kind of interesting. What would you say to that first year, second year student, right? That is interested about this. What would you say to them?
Question. I think I would kind of share, I feel like my evolution, just being a part of this for, I think like 10 months now. I think I'm a very different person than I was than before I started doing all this. So again, the class is not about Theresa, but I think just from like a professional and personal development, I think this has like been a really key difference in building my confidence in myself, not just like clinically, but just also like to make an impact in people's lives. Because I think over time, seeing the difference in like attitude and also physical capability of participants has been like really uplifting. And I think it just comes to show that, well, yeah, I wish I could see them, 4, 5, 7 days a week. Even just doing like a twice a week class has made that large scale of a difference in their lives. And I've learned like a lot from them just as much as they've learned from me and Christian, in terms of like real life application of how to modify things, especially if you're trying to encourage them doing stuff at home, like brainstorming like safe ways for them to practice these strategies at home or stuff like that. So again, it's just been like a real life application of like classroom content to real life. And I think that's priceless in a way, as much as I pay tuition to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm just really
Yeah.
grateful
Not every
to have been
project's like that.
I'm
Yeah.
just really grateful to have been a part of it. So it's worth developing that confidence and clinical maturity now.
Yeah.
Just go
That's
for
very
it.
wise of you because I mean, yeah, so many of us we don't get that opportunity in the environment where you are. And, a lot of us will get this type of experience in the wild, wild west, right? Maybe off on your own. You have no clue, if you're doing it well or correct or don't have insight or doing it with peers, right? And so for you all to be able to do this with the insight of, amazing faculty and other students, right? Like that is huge for sure. That was a really good point. Christian, what would you say?
Well, Theresa took majority of my answer, but
No, I didn't.
I would say words of advice. So the way that I used to run the class, I feel like is very different from how I run the class now. Like I mentioned, I'm also a personal trainer. So, when I first started the class, I was like, oh, I need to make sure I hit every primary pattern and just make it
Every
like a
class.
resistance training class. Yeah, every class. But then I just kind of took a step back and I asked myself, what is the most important thing for a fall prevention class? Lower body strength, balance, and then fall techniques. So if you're thinking about starting a class, I would just keep that in mind. Like, what is the most important thing for these people? And go from there. But
Boom.
otherwise, Theresa took my whole answers.
I love
And
it. I
one
love
more
it.
thing too, don't forget that everything that Christian's doing has come out of our Delphi. So that's going to be coming out soon. So if you're trying to start a class, you can look through all the consensus items on that study and see like, okay, what makes sense for us.
I love that. So we will definitely be sharing that whenever that gets published. So I appreciate y'all's time. I know y'all got class here in a little bit, which is cool to talk about it and then to go and do the thing. But I appreciate y'all coming on here to talk and share. I find this very motivating for me, and I know it will be for faculty, for students, that we have the ability to create these programs that are very effective and can ultimately, change people's lives. The people that we're serving, but then also everyone around us, right? Like I think about your all's peers in your classes that are going to be better Jerry PTs because they're seeing what y'all are doing, right? And that makes me super pumped. So thank you all. Keep crushing it. I'll check out the show notes, right? We'll have some email addresses, maybe an Instagram handle or two, right? And then I'll put all the resources related to like the flyer. And then we'll be sharing the Delphi study on our social media accounts as well. So I appreciate y'all. Have an amazing class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin.